6:47 a.m., a message from your real estate lawyer arrived. Avoid signing anything. The house sale appears fraudulent. Contact me urgently. In the midst of sipping coffee in my kitchen, your attention was caught by this revelation that could potentially dismantle your marriage. It had only been 2 days since Lydia, with a cheerful demeanor, claimed to have found a buyer for our house, a transaction we had previously discussed but hadn't formally listed. According to her, all I needed was to sign at the closing next week. In hindsight, there were reasons to be suspicious then, to ponder why she suddenly managed everything so smoothly regarding a sale that seemed only recently on the agenda. However, you were overwhelmed, burnt out from working 60-hour weeks at your engineering firm, constantly traveling for project launches with the goal of saving for your daughter Brooklyn's college fund. Managing household finances had always been Lydia's responsibility. Now, you were informed that something catastrophic was amiss. You promptly called your lawyer back. 8 years ago, Dennis Hoffman managed our house purchase, a diligent lawyer who approached every document as if it were a bomb to defuse. "Garrett," Dennis said, his voice controlled tightly, as if delivering bad news. "Yesterday, I received a call from a colleague at the title company. Your wife has submitted a purchase agreement for your property. The sale price is $50,000. The coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering on the tile floor, spilling dark liquid across the white ceramic. "That's impossible," I said. "Our house is worth over $1 million. We had it appraised last year at one point. I even checked the contract this morning. The buyer is listed as Bryce K. Zolano. Does that name mean anything to you?" My chest tightened. Bryce. The name Lydia casually mentioned 8 months ago, her cycling buddy from the Saturday morning group ride. The man who assisted her in preparing for the Charity Century ride last summer is a friend of hers, as I explained. They often cycle together. A long pause met Dennis' response. "Garrett," he said, "the signature on this purchase agreement belongs to you, but I've seen your signature many times before. This one doesn't look like yours, and the contract has been dated 3 weeks ago, implying that this transaction has progressed without your knowledge. Someone forged my signature. It seems so, but there's more. The contract contains a clause asserting you acknowledge the property's market value is $50,000 because of significant structural damage and code violations necessitating demolition." "This isn't true," he asked. "Indeed not," I replied. "Our house is perfect. We renovated the kitchen 2 years ago. There are no issues with it. This, therefore, is a case of fraud. Since both your spouse and Bryce K. Zolano would be implicated, it appears to be a conspiracy to commit this fraud. This morning, I'm submitting an emergency injunction to halt the property sale. However, Garrett, this situation could turn sour. If she allegedly forged your signature and manipulated property values, we might be looking at criminal accusations. In my opinion, she seems to be plotting to transfer your major asset to her lover at a fraction of its value, then divorce you, claiming you own no property. This move is audacious, reckless, and if we can substantiate it, they could both face prison time." The details in my kitchen, the custom cabinets, marble countertops, our coffee spot, suddenly feel like proof of a deception I failed to notice earlier. What's the next step? Initially, don't let her know we're onto her scheme. Secondly, refuse to sign any documents. Lastly, start collecting every financial document you can locate. Statements from banks, credit cards, anything showing transactions between her and K. Zolano. "Check your accounts, Garrett," immediately. I opened my laptop, trembling, and logged into our shared checking account. The balance displayed $847. $3 weeks earlier it had shown over $30,000. "Dennis," I whispered hoarsely. "Our accounts have been emptied, approximately $30,000. Where did it vanish?" I scrolled through the transaction history, finding numerous transfers over the past month to an account unknown to me. "I don't know, it seems to be an external bank with the name LC Holdings on it." "LC Holdings," Dennis muttered angrily. "That's probably a shell LLC. She appears to have planned this. Garrett, I must be direct. Your wife isn't just having an affair, but is trying to financially ruin you. We need to act swiftly." The following 72 hours were a whirlwind of legal petitions, emergency hearings, and heart-wrenching revelations. Dennis secured the injunction. The home sale was halted 48 hours before the planned completion. Lydia's response revealed everything to me. She arrived home that night, her face red with anger. "What have you done?" I found myself seated at the dining table, engulfed by printouts of bank statements and property documents. I had spent the entire day reorganizing our finances. "I prevented you from taking our house," I told her calmly. "Stealing, Garrett, I thought I'd found a buyer. I was attempting to aid us in escaping this mortgage for $50,000. When the property is worth $1.2 million, Her eyes briefly reflected the arithmetic behind them, the mental struggle to concoct a believable excuse. The market collapsed. I received the best offer possible. Don't interrupt me, I interrupted her. I am aware of Bryce. I know you falsified my signature. I am aware of your fabricated structural damage claims and the transfer of our bank funds to an LLC you established, causing her face to pale. I requested a divorce and demanded immediate eviction from this house. Initially, she denied, then expressed anger, followed by tears. When these tactics failed, she dialed someone, likely Bryce. I spent that night restless, instead choosing to collaborate with Dennis on filing for divorce and securing a restraining order to bar Lydia from accessing our shared assets. By morning, the legal system was set in motion, but this was merely the start. Over the next 6 weeks, my forensic accountant, Tessa, a meticulous woman recommended by Dennis, exposed the entirety of the scheme. Lydia hadn't just formed LC Holdings. She had been channeling funds into it for 9 months, starting shortly after meeting Bryce on that cycling group. The credit card statements revealed recurring payments to a property management firm in Nevada. Investigating further, it was uncovered that Lydia and Bryce had jointly leased a high-end condo as their personal hideaway. Tessa clarified during our discussions that they weren't intending to swindle your house for $50,000. Instead, their plan was to buy the property for that amount and instantly resell it at market value. The substantial profit of over $1 million would then be deposited into their shared account. Lydia's intention was to divorce you, claim no shared assets, and vanish with Casalano. However, I pointed out that the house is in both our names. Tessa suggested that Lydia likely assumed the deception wouldn't be discovered until after the sale closed. By then, the money would supposedly be offshore and beyond reach, even if a lawsuit ensued. It's a long-term scheme, Garrett. For nearly 9 months, she orchestrated this intricate plan. The betrayal pierced deeper than the infidelity. Lydia wasn't merely infatuated with someone else. She methodically schemed my financial ruin, employing the same precision she used to manage our household finances. However, her scheme was flawed, and I diligently recorded each error. The forged signature stood out as the most conspicuous blunder. Dennis enlisted a forensic document expert who corroborated our suspicions. The signature on the purchase contract wasn't mine. The stroke patterns deviated, the pressure points didn't align, and the spacing between letters contradicted my natural handwriting. Furthermore, there was the appraisal. Lydia had engaged an appraiser to assess the house at $50,000. Upon interrogation, he broke down easily. Bryce had bribed him with $5,000 in cash to concoct a false report, claiming non-existent structural damage. The appraiser confessed under oath about the bribery, with our financial trail tracing each transfer from our joint account to LC Holdings, every payment Lydia made on the Nevada condo, credit card bills for romantic dinners and weekend trips, all seemingly for household expenses, but charged on cards I believed were only for that purpose. Later, we discovered the emails. Lydia had been careless with her emails. She used our kitchen iPad, primarily for recipes and shopping lists, to communicate with Bryce. She didn't log out, and the emails revealed their affair as well as the scheme. It appeared Bryce had researched real estate fraud techniques and found instances of spouses successfully transferring property to third parties without their consent in such cases. The emails showed them discussing the potential profits and future plans. A message from Lydia sent a chill down my spine. Once the situation concludes, Garrett will be penniless and unable to afford a lawyer to pursue us. They aim to obliterate me utterly. I collated every document, email, and bank statement into a comprehensive dossier. Dennis scrutinized it thoroughly, similar to a prosecutor preparing for trial. This evidence is indisputable, he asserted. We have proof of conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, forgery, and dissipation of marital assets. The criminal case is simple. The divorce case is simpler still. She receives nothing. I demanded both of them and will ensure that happens. The divorce process progressed swiftly, given the evidence of fraudulent activities and falsified documents. Lydia's lawyer, who appeared genuinely astonished by her actions, suggested a settlement. The settlement was harsh for her. She received nothing, no portion of the house, no spousal support, no access to our retirement funds. She would bear half the marital debt, yet own none of the assets. The legal consequences were catastrophic. Criminal charges were brought against Lydia and Bryce 3 months later, following collaboration with the district attorney's office. Charges included conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, forgery, and in Bryce's case, bribery of an appraiser. The trial was set 15 months after Dennis' initial text message. During those 15 months, there were depositions, evidence collection, and attempts by Lydia and Bryce's lawyers to find a non-existent defense. The courtroom on the day of the trial was smaller than anticipated from TV shows, with wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lights, and uncomfortable benches in the gallery. Lydia, seated at the defense table on the left, appeared thinner and older, avoiding eye contact upon my entrance. Bryce sat beside her at the adjacent defense table with his own attorney. In a state worse than Lydia, his eyes hollowed. He donned an ill-fitting suit instead of his pricey cycling attire. I sat in the front row of the gallery with Dennis by my side. The district attorney, a meticulous woman specializing in financial crimes named Patricia, was at the prosecutor's table organizing her files. At exactly 9:00 a.m., Judge Whitmore, a 60-year-old former prosecutor known for his strict stance on fraud cases, entered the room. Dennis had delved deeply into him. If you were to stand trial for fraud before Whitmore, he'd advised, you better have a solid reason or a device that can travel through time. The trial spanned 3 days. Patricia systematically presented her evidence. A forensic document examiner testified about the falsified signature, displaying side-by-side comparisons on a large screen. The genuine versus the fake signatures were strikingly distinct when displayed that way. Even an ordinary person could discern the forgery. The appraiser testified about Bryce's bribery attempt, his voice quivering as he recounted how Bryce had attempted to give him cash to manipulate the report. He characterized it as a favor from one friend to another, the appraiser explained. He insisted no one would be harmed. Tessa, my forensic accountant, guided the jury through the financial trail, detailing every transfer from our shared account to LC Holdings, the Nevada condo lease agreement, and credit card expenditures at romantic locations. She presented it as a chronology of treachery, with each transaction another piece of the scheme. Patricia introduced the emails, all of them, including the romantic messages, but more significantly, the strategic ones. The jury listened to conversations between Lydia and Bryce about the $50,000 deal, calculating their profit margins, and planning their escape to Costa Rica, a detail I wasn't aware of until discovery. Although the judge maintained an impassive expression, I observed the jury. Some appeared disgusted, while one older woman kept shaking her head. They didn't accept Lydia's lawyer's assertion that it was a misconception or Bryce's statement that he had merely made a valid offer for the property on the third day. Patricia summoned me to the witness stand, a moment I had been dreading, not because I had anything to conceal, but because I would have to confront Lydia while recounting her actions that damaged our marriage. Patricia asked her questions plainly. Mr. Garrett, did you endorse the real estate purchase agreement? No, I didn't. Did you give permission for your wife to sign in your stead? No. Were you informed about the property sale until your attorney contacted you? No, my wife told me she had found a buyer but never presented any documents. Had you known about your wife creating LC Holdings? No, I wasn't aware of that account until after my lawyer halted the house sale. Did you authorize the funds moving from our joint account to LC Holdings? No, and did you know about your wife's connection with Bryce Casolano? I hesitated. That was the instant that caused me the most pain. I was aware they were cycling companions. Unbeknownst to me, they were engaged in an affair or plotting to swindle my home. Patricia presented the appraisal report, stating the house was valued at $50,000, alongside our authentic appraisal from a year prior, which indicated the property's worth at $1.2 million. Mr. Garrett, does your house have significant structural damage necessitating demolition? No, it is in pristine condition, having undergone extensive renovations. There is no damage. Have you ever made statements to anyone implying that your home was only worth $50,000? Never, that's preposterous. During Lydia's attorney's cross-examination, he attempted to undermine my testimony by insinuating negligence in managing our finances or disregard for signs of marital troubles, but he failed to refute the facts. I hadn't signed the document. I didn't approve the transfers. The fraud was palpable. Upon my resignation, I turned to Lydia, and she was quietly crying, her mascara running down her face. The closing arguments were mercilessly harsh. Patricia presented the evidence systematically and dispassionately. The defendants orchestrated a meticulously planned fraud, aiming to seize Mr. Garrett's prized possession, his home. They fabricated signatures, distorted property values, bribed an appraiser for a fake report, established a front company to conceal embezzled funds, and plotted to escape with more than $1 million of illicit earnings abroad. This isn't just a misunderstanding, it's criminal activity. Conspiracy, Lydia's lawyer attempted to portray her as a vengeful spouse acting impulsively due to emotional distress. Bryce's attorney argued that his client was merely a homebuyer who trusted the information given by the seller. Neither argument persuaded. The evidence was overwhelming. After 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. The foreperson, a mature woman who had shaken her head throughout the trial, stood to announce the decision. Guilty on charges of conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, forgery, and bribery. Lydia trembled. Bryce remained impassive. An extra count, bribery, guilty as well. Judge Whitmore set sentencing for 6 weeks hence. On that day, the courtroom bore the same suffocating atmosphere, but the ambience was altered. This time, it wasn't about establishing culpability. It was about punishment. Addressing the accused directly, Judge Whitmore stated, "Ms. Lydia Garrett and Mr. Bryce Casolano, you orchestrated a sophisticated scheme to defraud Mr. Garrett of property valued above $1 million. You falsified signatures, fabricated documents, and plotted to seize a man's home, which probably represented his biggest financial investment to date. This wasn't an impulsive act driven by emotion or a mistake in judgment. It was coldly calculated, premeditated, and cruel." He paused before looking at them both intently. "In this case, Mr. Casolano, you weren't just involved in the fraudulent activities. You also paid a licensed appraiser to falsify documents. This action tarnishes the honesty of the real estate sector and erodes public faith in property valuations." Bryce's lawyer attempted to plead for leniency, but Judge Whitmore halted him. The court imposes a 12-year sentence on Mr. Casolano in a federal penitentiary, followed by 3 years of supervised release. Furthermore, you are commanded to repay the full $1.2 million owed to Mr. Garrett, representing the value of the property you attempted to swindle. Bryce paled, and his lawyer tightened his grip on him. "Mrs. Garrett," Judge Whitmore continued, "you violated your husband's trust not only through infidelity, but by attempting to financially ruin him. You falsified his signature, drained shared bank accounts, and intended to leave him destitute. The court imposes a sentence of 8 years in federal prison, followed by 2 years of supervised release, and you are ordered to jointly compensate Mr. Casolano." Lydia wept openly. Her lawyer whispered something to her, but she merely shook her head, her figure slumping forward. "The defendants will surrender to federal custody within 30 days. This court is adjourned." The gavel struck. I remained there for a moment, pondering the recent turn of events. 8 years for Lydia, 12 for Bryce. They sought to seize my future, yet they ended up forfeiting their own. Dennis placed his hand on my shoulder. "Let's depart." Outside the courthouse, the afternoon sun seemed unrealistic. I had spent 15 months existing in a limbo of investigation, discovery, and trial preparations. Now it was concluded. "How do you feel?" Dennis inquired. I considered this. Not content, not triumphant, merely exhausted. I declared that I had started to leave the past behind, I asserted, and followed through. The divorce was formally concluded prior to sentencing. The house remained under my ownership, mortgage-free, coincidentally, as some of the recovered funds from LC Holdings were utilized to settle the loan. Brooklyn was in college, attending on a full scholarship I had assisted her in obtaining. She no longer communicated with her mother. This wasn't due to me, but rather her own decision after discovering Lydia's attempts to harm us both. 6 months following sentencing, I sold the house. It was plagued by too many spirits and memories of deceitful mornings with coffee. Instead, I purchased a smaller residence, a condo that overlooked the river. It required minimal maintenance, offered no history, and for a while I abstained from dating due to trust issues. However, eventually, I encountered someone, a woman named Claire who worked in the library system. She was aware of my story, as everyone in town was, but she didn't judge me or treat me like a victim or a moral lesson. 3 years post-trial, a letter from Lydia arrived, routed via Dennis's office. Initially, I considered discarding it unread. However, my curiosity prevailed. The missive was succinct, an apology devoid of explanations or justifications. She admitted her faults, acknowledging she ruined all that was good in her life due to a misplaced prioritization of excitement over integrity. She expressed hope for my happiness and forgiveness from Brooklyn in the future. After a solitary reading, I stored it away. No response was given. Bryce never issued an apology. Rumors hinted at an attempt to overturn his sentence, claiming it as unduly harsh. The appeal was rejected, ensuring he would serve every one of his 12 years. Sometimes I reflect on that fateful morning when Dennis's message arrived. My life took a drastic turn with those words. Don't sign anything. If I'd trusted Lydia one more time, if I hadn't questioned the sale when I should have, I would have lost it all. But I didn't. I had a good lawyer. I asked questions, I documented everything meticulously, and built an ironclad case. People sometimes ask me if I regret my persistence, if I feel guilty about Lydia being in prison, but no, she made her choice. The same goes for Bryce. They chose to lie, forge, and steal. They chose to ruin me instead of ending our marriage honestly. In truth, I was just defending myself. It wasn't revenge, it was survival. Today, I reside in that condo by the river. Claire is cooking dinner in the kitchen. Brooklyn is visiting this weekend. She's in her final year of graduate school, focusing on environmental law. We're planning a hiking trip for her spring break. 15 years ago, when I purchased a home alongside Lydia, my life wasn't as I envisioned today. It's scaled down in aspects, more tranquil, yet it holds a unique essence, crafted on honesty rather than deceit, and financed through uprightness instead of wrongdoing. This transformation is the heart of everything.